My name is Cora Townsend, and I was 33 years old the morning a bank statement told me I had $0. I had been expecting to see $224,000 in that account. That money was a promise from my grandfather. It was my entire future, and my parents had taken every penny of it to pay for my brother's wedding at a vineyard. I need you to understand who I am before I tell you what happened next. I am an ICU nurse in Southern Ohio. I work 12-hour night shifts, and I have been doing this kind of work since I was 18 years old, starting as a nursing assistant in a rehab center while slowly paying for my own classes. It took me 15 years to go from wiping down patients to wearing an ICU badge. No one paid my bills for me. No one gave me a break. I did it myself, one shift and one exam at a time. I failed courses and retook them. I worked days and studied nights. My badge says Cora Townsend, registered nurse, and I earned every letter on it. I tell you this so you understand that I am not someone who falls apart. I figure out what to do next. But there's a difference between choosing a hard road and having someone steal the ground from beneath you right when you are finally ready to walk forward. The acceptance letter for my doctoral program arrived on a Tuesday in March. I was still in my hospital clothes, standing in a cold parking garage at 6:45 in the morning after a shift where I lost one patient and saved another. I almost didn't check my phone. The email said I had been accepted into a 3-year program to become a nurse anesthetist, someone who specializes in keeping patients safe during surgery. It was a thing I had wanted for 15 years, ever since I watched a calm and steady nurse talk a terrified patient through their fear before an operation. I wanted to be that person. The program cost roughly $220,000 over 3 years, including living expenses, and I was not worried because I had the money. When I was 18, my grandfather Walt set up a special savings account in his name for my education. He ran a heating and cooling company he had built from one truck and a handshake in 1979, and he was the kind of man who kept every receipt and every check in a blue accordion folder. He contributed to that account for birthdays, holidays, and whenever the business did well. By the time I was accepted, the account had grown to over $224,000. He told me once, plainly, that his granddaughter was not going to borrow money for school. I believe him because he had never once broken his word. 3 years before my acceptance, Grandpa Wall had a small stroke and ended up in my own hospital unit. I was the one who caught his heart rhythm changing the night and called the doctor in time. He recovered, but it shook him, and he decided to let my father Wade help manage the education account so he wouldn't have to drive to the bank anymore. I remember the look on my father's face when Grandpa suggested this. At the time, I thought it was relief. Now I know exactly what it was. I gave my notice at work on June 1st. My supervisor hugged me and said I would be exceptional. I had my tuition deposit scheduled for July 15th, and my apartment lease already signed. 2 weeks after quitting, I called my father to discuss taking out the first payment for school. He snapped at me, told me he would handle it, and told me to stop asking about money. I did what I had always done with my family. I trusted him and let it go. On July 2nd, I received a statement from the account manager. I almost didn't open it. When I did, it said my balance was $0. I sat there reading it again and again. I pulled up the transaction history and saw withdrawals going back 3 years, labeled tuition and fees, even though I was never enrolled in anything. The largest withdrawal was from 2 weeks prior, $47,000 paid directly to the Vance Vineyard. My brother Trevor had just gotten engaged to Sloan Vance, whose family owned that vineyard and half the town alongside it. The rest of the money had gone to flowers, food, and what I later learned were failed attempts to save my father's quietly collapsing business. I went to my parents' house that night. My mother Diane was going over catering menus. When I told her the balance was $0, she did not look surprised. She told me the wedding was more important for the family's future, and that Trevor needed the money more than I did. She said I was strong and would find another way. That phrase, "you'll find a way," was something my family had been saying about me my whole life, as if my ability to survive hardship gave them the right to create it. I found my father the next morning in his shop. He told me he planned to pay it back, but that his business was struggling and the pressure had been enormous. He said the wedding was a good start for Trevor's future. He told me to leave Grandpa out of it. That was the moment I knew I would not. I called my grandfather on a Thursday. I told him everything. There was a long silence before he spoke. He told me quietly that he had never authorized a single one of those withdrawals. He had trusted his son, and his son had used my name to steal from both of us. The next day, I drove to his house. He had the blue folder open on his kitchen table. We went through every page together and saw that the withdrawals had started the very month my father received access to the account. My mother didn't even know the business was failing. She had been kept in the dark while my grandfather's money, my money, quietly disappeared. Grandpa said he wasn't just angry. He had made a decision. The lie had been celebrated in front of 200 people, and he believed the truth deserved the same audience. We spent 3 weeks preparing. I picked up extra shifts at another hospital. My mother called repeatedly asking me to promise I wouldn't make a scene at the wedding. I told her I wouldn't make a scene. I kept that promise. On the day of the wedding, I wore the green dress my mother had chosen and drove to pick up Grandpa. He was in his best suit with the blue folder under his arm. The vineyard was beautiful. Crystal chandeliers and elaborate flowers everywhere I looked, all paid for what the money meant to fund my future. During the ceremony, the officiant spoke about honesty and commitment. I watched Grandpa rest his hand on that folder. When the toast began after the ceremony, the family asked Grandpa Walt to speak. Before he stood, he turned to my father and offered him one final chance to tell the truth himself. My father said nothing. So Grandpa walked to the front of the room in front of 200 guests and told them everything. He explained the account he had built over 15 years for my education. He told them the full amount that had been in it and showed the documents proving how my father had drained it piece by piece, while labeling withdrawals with my name to disguise what he was doing. He held up the papers showing that the chandeliers above their heads and the wine in their glasses had been paid for with money meant for my schooling. Then he told the room that he would be replacing every dollar himself and that no one else would ever have access to it again. My father tried to interrupt, but it was already done. My mother stood frozen, understanding in that moment not only what my father had taken from me, but that the business she didn't know was failing had been propped up the same way. The Vance family began quietly gathering their things. They had not come to be part of someone else's scandal. My brother told me I had made his wedding about myself. I told my father the money was never his. Grandpa and I walked out together into the night air. My parents' marriage ended within days. My father moved into a small apartment. My brother's new in-laws pulled back from all of us. My mother called to tell me the family was in pieces. I told her the pieces had been broken for a long time before that evening. I started my program in August. I sat in that first class with a new notebook, and I felt something I had been waiting years to feel. Grandpa transferred the full amount into a new account in my name only, and I have not looked back. I didn't land on my feet this time. I stood up on them. There is a difference, and I want you to know that difference is everything.